Welcome Internet. This is a video that's a follow-up from last week's video on the fight for the survival of psychoanalysis and psychodynamic theory in French institutions. And I just wanted to say that basically the amendment has been withdrawn, which is excellent news. I'm so happy. And I really wanted to thank you, all of you that participated. Of course, and mainly those who have signed the petition, but those who've shared the video, liked it, shared the petition directly. Thank you immensely, because even though I'm going to go in depth into the situation, I am convinced that this petition has helped to basically make the senator withdraw her amendment. Now, I said in a post I made earlier this week that I will go more in depth, and that's what I'm planning to do on this video. So basically, even though it is a victory, and I really count it as such, it isn't the end of the fight. So, for two reasons. First, the senator that proposed the bill, or the amendment, should I say, has said that she will not stop fighting to defund psychoanalysis and psychodynamic psychotherapies. Therefore, it's basically she's made it her personal fight. And therefore, this is a battle. I hope a major victory, but still just a battle. Therefore, it isn't like everly happy after kind of situation. We still have to remain vigilant, and our unions have told us that basically we will have to be very careful in the years and even months to come, because fundamentally, even if the senator has withdrawn her amendment, the government, which was represented at that moment in the Senate by the healthcare minister, made it very clear that she was in agreement with the ideas. Not, and this is where it becomes tricky, the minister did not agree on how the amendment or where it was presented, but the core ideas of defunding psychoanalysis was basically agreed upon, but just not like that. So you can see that this is fundamentally a victory, but it's not the end of the story, right? So it is completely possible that in the future I might make an update or keep you informed, because even though I don't think they're gonna try this every month, right? Especially given the political situation in France at present, as if you don't know, France is in a massive political turmoil in which our parliament does not agree on anything with the government, and most governments are disintegrated by the parliament. So it's a very tense political situation, right? And basically, I think that they have bigger fish to fry than us, psychotherapists, psychiatrists, and psychologists that use psychodynamic theories. Especially because, in a twisted turn of fate, this year, the year 2025, was meant to be the mental health year. And that was supposed to be the national cause of this year. And I find it ironic, and sadly ironic, that they wanted to basically break down mental health for the year of mental health. So this is basically it. Also, I should note that this has sparked a lot of debate and a lot of discussion in France, which I think is a good thing, because for a long time I think that psychoanalysis has kind of stayed on a pedestal and not really engaged in this, but it seems to be quite different nowadays. That psychoanalysis, when I say this, I mean all the branches of the spectrum, right? From the Lacanians to, let's say, the Freudians, object theory, and so on and so forth. All of these people seem more interested now to be part of the discussion and of the debate, rather than pulling out of it or even sometimes, and I've seen this, being condescending and not even engaging in it. Because the problem with not engaging is that makes us that means we've de facto lost. Because if you're not present, if you're absent in the debate, then no one will ever be convinced by absence, right? So at least it has, I think, this quality that it has brought us together, and we are determined, mental health professionals in France, to safeguard our practices so that our patients can benefit from good treatment. And good treatment doesn't mean that CBT or any other therapy like EMDR is bad. Absolutely not. It just means that patients have the right to a plethora of methods. And I know, for having witnessed it and having worked with people who had CBT or EMDR and it didn't completely cure them or heal their problems. And I think that that's also something that's important to say, is that no therapy is going to ever be 100%, ever. And therefore psychoanalysis has its place because it's one among many. But it's still one, and it's still important to have it. And once you start hunting down methods, you're going to basically eliminate everything that's a little too costly or a little too long. So as I was saying in my previous video, this isn't about just it's going to stop at psychoanalysis. That would be incredibly naive to think that. It's going to be, if they start with psychoanalysis, they will go on to something else and something else and something else, and so on and so forth. So the good part of this is that we basically have won the battle. We are united, and there's so many more people than what I would have ever expected, even in my wildest dreams, as the petition is almost nearing, at time of speaking, and still people signing it, near the 100,000 mark. It's enormous, especially in a country in which psychoanalysis is so detested. So it's incredible that it has reached this peak, and this is amazing, really. Also, so I just also want to speak about fundamentally the position of the government. So the government made it very clear that they agree with the ideas of the senator, but just not in this specific form, or in this specific instance, which was the Senate. It's like, no, you're not wrong, but this is not the place to do it. So they kind of shown their hand early, I think. At least this is my perspective. And take it with a grain of salt, as I am no politician, I have no insider knowledge. This is just me, a psychologist, thinking about what is happening, rather than someone that knows anything beyond the, let's say, every man's level, right? So basically, the government is not in disagreement with anything that the senator has said. But they, I think, did not want to do it like that. What they wanted to do is to go through, I think, l'Agence Régionale de Santé and aussi la HAS, la Haute Autorité de Santé, meaning the high health institution. I think that that's more their plan, to do it like that. And I think maybe the senator played the cards a little too early for the government. That being said, the senator herself has written the amendment in a very specific way, because in how she intervened in the Senate, there was a very notable discrepancy between what she wrote and what she said. And I'm going to be talking about these discrepancies. Of course, here I don't want to do any ad hominem attacks. I will not do that because I don't believe in them. It's not about the person, it's about the ideas. And I will, without regret, basically invisibilize any comments that's an ad hominem attack towards her as a person, because I don't believe in them, and I think that they're wrong and they're never justified. Alright? Anyway, so the senator said that she wanted to ban psychoanalysis for everything, from basically in the amendment that made it very clear that no public money should ever go to anyone practicing with not just psychoanalysis, but any psychodynamic ideas. Here you can see the problem is that what do you count as a psychodynamic idea? Is it the idea of the unconscious mind? Is it the relationship towards other people? Is it the idea that not everything is conscious and that there is patterns that we are victims of? Does it mean that, for example, chemotherapy, which has psychoanalytic ideas mixed into it, gets defunded as well? See, it poses a lot of technical issues that aren't that easy to answer. And because technically, for example, chemotherapy is still CBT, but it's CBT with elements of psychoanalysis. So what happens for those very specific therapies, right? And after that, basically, the amendment was to cut everyone, right? And in her discourse to an interviewer, which she gave to the Senate, an interview to the let's say, the mediatic branch of the Senate, and her discourse in the Senate when she withdrew the bill, both had discrepancies, because she stated that no child should suffer from psychoanalysis. But in the bill, there's no mention of children. It's for everyone. And this irks me because it seems to be of bad faith as an argument. Like you say everyone, and then you go, no, but children should never have to suffer psychoanalysis. So we were talking about children from the get-go. Does it mean that for adults it was okay? And basically she said that in her amendment that there was no scientific proof of psychoanalysis, which is wrong, just objectively wrong, and psychodynamic theory is, of course. And then basically when she presented her bill, she said that it's except for autism and neurological, how do you say already? Neurodivergencies, it isn't up to debate that psychoanalysis is not as effective and it's not as good. But for all the other disorders, it can be put into question. There can be scientific validity. She even states that herself, that it's much more open as a debate. So there's a lot of, it seems to me at least, a lot of bad faith. Like, we could have had that debate without just trying to cut psychoanalysis. And also she says that her goal was to open the debate. But if that were the case, you wouldn't basically create an amendment just hidden from everyone's eyes, basically in secret, and then just once you're caught, go, oh well, I never intended for it to become for professional organizations to push back. I never intended to become a celebrity through this bill, or through this amendment, should I say. And see where it becomes dishonest is that she tried to do it unseen, unheard, and almost as if it was going to fly under the radar. So basically what she wanted to do was dishonest in terms of movement, right? And this is where the problem comes, is that if our organizations were not well informed and basically in the know, it could have just gone through. Because it's also something that was important with the petition, although some of you, should I say, and even myself, are sometimes had skepticism about these petitions. I do think that the fact that there were so many people signing so fast made a lot of senators backtrack. And the fact that this specific senator that proposed it had to back down, I think, is in big part also due to the petition, in which basically there were so many people against it that it was going to become a struggle. And I think that both her and the government knew this, and they did not want to go for that struggle right now. That doesn't mean they won't do it later. But that's for something else. Anyway, so I found the arguments of this senator to be quite dishonest on the whole, about virtually at every level. The only thing I found any honesty in was her personal story. Because a moment she asks for for the Senate if she can talk about her experience. And I am going to take her experience at face value. I'm not going to contradict, I'm not going to dig, I am not going to interpret. She says that her sister had a child with Rett syndrome, which, if you don't know, is a neurodivergence in which the child regresses when to more archaic stages. Like the first months of development are normal, and then there's a decline. It was often believed to be a neurodegenerative disorder, but it doesn't seem to be the case nowadays. People seem to say that it's neurodivergence, which I am not an expert, so I'm not going to basically give my opinion because I am not well informed enough to have one. In any case, the child had this type of disorder, and her sister went to, let's say, a psychoanalytic psychologist. And basically, after a couple of minutes or a dozen minutes of play with the psychologist, apparently the psychologist said the issue is that your child does not love you. And the sister of the senator apparently broke down. And I have to say that this, again, I'm taking the a priori that everything is true. And that it happened as she's exposed it. If this is true, this is gross incompetence on the part of the psychologist. And I basically do not want to protect, I don't want to defend them. They should have seen the child, especially because Rett has certain symptoms, like, for example, the inability to hold objects, which basically should be a marker of you need to go and see a medical doctor about this, not just because it's genetic, right, in essence. So you need to go and see a medical doctor. I don't think, and basically that psychologist over-interpreted the gestures of the child and basically guilt-tripped the mother, and the mother basically broke down. And I can understand, truly, how much suffering there is when a professional does not do their job, shows incompetence, and guilts you. But here's the catch. You can't condemn a whole discipline, a whole bunch of professionals, because one person had made a mistake. If not, what would we do with surgeons? Because hundreds of people die in surgery. That doesn't mean that surgery is wrong or bad or evil. But sometimes people can be incompetent, there can be complications, there can be so many other factors that come into play. And again, I'm not trying to protect the individual that made this misdiagnosis, because this has made the person suffer, which should never happen in our case. Even if there are sometimes iatrogenic effects to psychotherapy, it shouldn't be basically the psychologist just interpreting and misfiring in their interpretations. Interpretations are very subtle and need a lot of data. So, my take is that the senator has suffered, her family has suffered. This is unacceptable. But this suffering should not justify the implementation of policies that will make other people suffer, because other patients, hundreds, if not thousands of people, have benefited from psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic theory. How many people have basically turned their lives around, have basically avoided suicide because of this, or thanks to psychoanalysis? And this idea that because one has suffered because of one incompetent individual, everyone that touches the method or does the method is pathological, or that basically we are pseudoscience. This is not the case. And people that have this argument often do not go forward in the data. It's easier to believe that psychoanalysis is an ideology because one does not want to see the unconscious mind, rather than confront their basically inner issues. It's always very easy. And when basically you've been hurt, then the discipline that has hurt you, be it psychoanalysis, medicine, sociology, anthropology, it's easy to see it as evil or wrong and stupid because it has hurt you. And the hurt is real. The hurt, the pain, the suffering, all of that has to be acknowledged. And we have to acknowledge where we have faltered as a profession, ethically, intellectually, and so on and so forth. But our faults collectively do not mean we don't have strengths, and we don't, or that we're useless or dangerous. Doesn't mean that. And I think that the problem when you're hurt is that it doesn't make you capable of good policy because you see the world through a prism, the prism of your own hurt and suffering, which again is valid, but it can't rule the world, and you can't just do that for that reason. In the same way that it would be ludicrous for someone, let's say, who has lost a relative in surgery, to make policies on surgery, banning surgery, because they feel it's dangerous. Of course, a lot of people are going to say it's absolutely not the same discipline, and I fully agree. It's just an example. But the same goes for, let's say, plumbing. If you have an incompetent plumber that floods your house because they have made a new leak, right? It's still incompetence, and they might have wrecked your apartment or your home. But it's not the fault of plumbing in general, it's the fault of one incompetent person. And maybe, and there's a real debate to be had, maybe that we, in the psychoanalytic field, in the 90s, have been too interpretive too quickly. That we have given opinions rather than try and basically justify our scientific insights. This is completely, we can talk about it. That's no issue. That's even a good thing, I think, to acknowledge one went wrong with our profession. When I mean profession, I mean everyone included. That this is a real discussion we can have. And I would add as a nuance that even in the 90s, where France was still into this idea for autism of the refrigerator mum, that even in the 90s there were people in psychoanalysis that were against that were adamantly against this association, against guilting the parents, against basically making of the parents scapegoats. And they were right. And the problem is that we've made them into scapegoats, that nowadays those same parents are in associations that hate us to the core and only want one thing is to see us gone, but they are basically, they've become that because of us. So therefore we've created our own enemy. Basically they were once our scapegoats, now we've become the scapegoats. And my wish would be to try and solve this problem and to show how much good these techniques can bring to people and how much love can be gained through psychoanalysis and psychodynamic psychology. And I really do believe that. And I think that that's why I will never stop fighting for it, because I find it beautiful. And of course, it has helped me immensely in my life, in every aspect, be it relational, emotional, intellectual, basically social. It has always helped me. And I think, and maybe I'm basically too optimistic, but I think it will always help me in a way or in another. Because what I've gained through it is immense. And I understand not everyone will, right? But how many people will be like me and will gain something from it? And that's where I want to end this video, is that yes, the fight goes on, but we have won, and thank you so much. Of course, for me and for my love for my work, but also for the patients, because they're at the core of all of this. If psychoanalysis was disruptive, destructive, or counterproductive, trust me, no one would be working with it, or very few people. The fact that we are so many shows that it's also effective, and that's something that's worth fighting for. And thank you to have fought along my side and alongside the rest of the mental health professionals in France. Thank you so much. And basically, I'll be seeing you in the next one.